Hello, my name is Madison. It's nice to see you. I'm glad you could make it. It is officially time for another reliably late monthly wrap up. I did read 13 books in the month of May, which is in fact the best reading month numerically that I have had. I also did read a lot of really freaking good books. This is honestly like such a good reading month, like an enjoyable reading month. I feel like I was really mood reading and reading like what felt right in the moment, which I forgot how good that was, not having a TBR. So I think for the next month-ish, another couple months, I am not going to be making a TBR and just like reading what feels right in the moment, because I think that's why I had such a good reading month, because it was kind of like a little bit all over the place. In total this month, I read 8 romances, 1 fantasy, and 5 thriller mysteries, so literally a bit of everything. We'll get into that. It honestly shocks me every single month how many books I read in like the 30 days. Like this is basically like a book every other day, which is insane to me. If you told me like 3 years ago, if you told me like even a year ago that I would be reading that much, I would say that you were insane. However, I had such a good reading month, so we are going to get into everything that I read in the month of May. Started off the month with Bad Blood, and then the little novella that comes after it, like this portion of the book that is called 12. I gave Bad Blood 5 stars and the little novella 4, like it was a cutesy little novella. This is the last book in the Natural series by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, and this series unlocked something in me. I have fallen so deeply in love, you'll see throughout this, with the YA true crime-esque genre. I am obsessed with this genre of book. I don't know how I did not read this earlier. I feel like in my mind, I thought that they were going to be like really childish. I'm not a huge fan of YA books, like culminatively. Does that make sense? Like all the time. I'm not always obsessed with like a good YA book. However, this series takes the cake. The entire Natural series is in the point of view of this girl named Cassie, and Cassie, like all of the other people in the Naturals program, had really tough, fucked up upbringings that has given them these natural skills that the FBI want. And the FBI is like, if we let you go out into the world, you're gonna like lose your natural abilities, so we're gonna bring you into this Naturals program and we're gonna let you work on cold cases. Think like natural profilers, natural lie detectors, that kind of jazz. And they all have such traumatic upbringings and such traumatic stories, and because of their upbringings and everything that they're connected to, they end up being involved in a lot of live cases because cases end up connecting to them. A lot of the story is like fairly convenient. All the stories end up connecting to the kids. The kids are like a very big part of these massive crime cases and syndicates. However, that did not take away from it at all. I did guess a lot of the twists in and throughout this series. I do think that All In and this one are like my favorites for the series tied. Like the way that the cases come together, it's so good. The entire series is so good. By the time we get to this point and you're like so locked in on all the kids, their backstories, everything, so good. It is so good. The little novella is cute. We didn't need it, but it's very cute. I'm glad that we got something else from the kids, because like I was very in this world when I was reading it. And if you're a true crime fan like I am, definitely pick up this series because I think you will love it. Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score, the first book in the Knock 'Em Out series. I honestly thought I would never read this book. I thought I would never read it. It was so daunting to me. I hear such like positive and negative things about all 3 books in the series. Some people love this one, hate the second 2. Some people love the second 2, hate this one. Like I just hear so much stuff about it, and it just made me like never gravitate to pick it up. But like forever ago, I asked you guys to help me pick TBR prompts for one of my TBR videos, and so many people said just like put Knock 'Em Out on one of the cards. So I did, and I pulled it, and it was on my TBR, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna read it. I loved it. I really liked it. I feel like it took me a minute to get in there. The beginning of it was kind of like slow and like kind of when you're meeting all of the characters. However, I found the story very gripping. There's something about Lucy Score's writing that it's just like you're following very normal, mundane, small things, but it's so entertaining. Like it's so easy to just like keep going once you care about the characters, which like in this much you have to care about them, or else like what are we doing here? But by the point that you like do start to care about them and like you do care what's gonna happen, it gets so good. I love her worlds. They're just like cutesy small town romances, and she does like the lighthearted, like a little bit of banter kind of funny books so well, and I'm excited to read on in this series. I'm nervous because I hope I'm not the person who like loves this one and then doesn't like the other 2, but we'll see. I finally did it. I finally finished the Chestnut Springs series. You guys know that I was holding out. I did not want this series to be finished. I also had heard so many people say that this is like not their favorite in the series, and I really didn't want Beau's book to be bad. I feel like I wasn't on the side of the fence that so many people were on, like while reading it, like waiting for Beau's story. Like I wanted Beau's story when we knew we were gonna get it, but I wasn't like itching for it. I will say this is probably like one of my least favorites in Chestnut Springs. Like if I think about it, it probably is my least favorite in Chestnut Springs. However, it's still like a 4-star. I still loved it. There's something about, I don't even remember the characters' names in this. I mean, that's not a tell to how good the book is because I never remember characters' name, point blank period. Bailey, see, just completely out of my brain. Beau and Bailey's story is cute. It had everything you want from like a good Elsie Silver book. I love Elsie Silver's writing. Like it's just, it tickles something in me. She does small town country romances like no other. And like when I say I want interconnected standalones, like the found family that you get from interconnected standalones, this is the blueprint. The Chestnut Springs series is what I need. There was something like overwhelmingly physical about Beau and Bailey's relationship, like how much they talked about the physicality of stuff. I feel like it took me out a little bit. Like there were a lot of moments that were like very cute and I was like, oh, I love this. This is very typical Chestnut Springs. Like I love them. And then then they would talk about something and I'd be like, okay, you took me out of it. You took me out of it a little bit. Still really good. This one felt very different than the rest of the series, I will say that. But like not for better or for worse, still really good. Really glad we got Beau's story, and I think it ended how it was supposed to. I'm not like enamored by the ending. Like it's kind of sad to me how it ends considering how all the other ones ended. I like love that for them. It makes sense. The Friend Zone by Abby Jimenez. I actually listened to this on audio and I started it when I was on a road trip, and I was like, I just need something cute and light and fun. And then I got halfway through the road trip and I had like 60% left of this, and I was like, I need to know what's gonna happen. And I listened to it on like 2.5x speed so that I could finish it. I brought this on vacation when I went with my parents like in February or March, and I let my mom read this copy of it. She destroyed it. She's a spine cracker, like a folded around kind of reader, which every time I saw her reading that book, my heart broke a little bit. So if this book looks like it's been through a washing machine, that is why. But she didn't love it. She thought it was good. It wasn't her favorite book ever, which I knew going in it wasn't going to be my favorite Abby Jimenez ever because it was her first book, if I'm not mistaken. It's the first book in the 3 interconnected standalones that come before the Part of Your World standalone series. What is the guy's name in this? Josh. In this, we're following Kristen and Josh, and Kristen is like harboring a secret that she thinks is a reason that she can never have like a happy, loving marriage, and she is currently dating a Marine that like the relationship's not great. But her best friend is set to get married, and she ends up forming this like unlikely, ends up being work relationship and like friendship with Josh, which is her best friend's fiance's best man. Everything that happens in this book is like, it really has that like underlying tone of Abby Jimenez, like emotional depth, and that little like itching that like makes you want to cry. I love the way that she writes so much, and I knew I wanted to read her backlog. It's definitely not like my favorite Abby Jimenez book to date. I plan on reading the rest of this, like Happily Ever After, Life's Too Short, and I know I'm gonna love them. Like every single time that I'm reading an Abby Jimenez book, it's just like a feeling. She is like truly one of my favorite authors. I ended up giving this a 4.5, and I stand on that. I don't think about it a ton, but like the writing and everything was there. I enjoyed reading it so much. There's nothing like flawed about it. It's just like not her best book ever. Like if I'm gonna compare them to each other, this is like not the 5 in comparison to Just for the Summer. She does romance with this like underlying emotional depth that like nobody else can conquer like her. Remember when I said I was loving the true crime YA genre? A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. I also listened to this on the way home from that road trip. I knew that I wanted to listen to an audiobook the second I got in my car, and I was like, oh my god, I did not queue anything up. Like what am I gonna do? So I asked really quickly on Instagram stories, and this was the very first suggestion that I got, and I had no interest in reading this series. So I was like, you know what? I'm just listening to it. It's like less of a commitment. I'm just gonna do it. I love it. I love it so much. I thought this was gonna be like a high school dark academia, a bunch of kids trying to commit a murder. That is what I pictured it as being. No, absolutely not. We are following the most iconic main character, Pip. She's like borderline kind of annoying and so type A. However, I love her and I'm rooting for her every single step of the way. She basically decides to do her senior capstone project, like her senior thesis, on this case that happened 5 years ago in the town that's like kind of haunted the town forever. Andy Bell was killed. Sal Singh, her boyfriend at the time, is also found out, and they're assuming that he committed suicide and that it was like a murder-suicide situation, but it's never sat right with her. So she's like, I'm gonna investigate it. Investigate it she does. I also realize I'm obsessed with Holly Jackson's writing. Finding fantasies and like thrillers and stuff like that that are like really beautifully written and like demand to be annotated is kind of rare. When the story is like so involved, it's like the fluffy writing goes out the window. It's not fluffy, but I love the way that she writes. There's something satisfying about the way that she writes, and the fact that they're like YA, they're still like big cases, still have so many clues. There's still like, you get to solve it with her. All of that is still there, but it doesn't like keep you up at night. It's not like gory and like, oh, I can't sleep at night. It's just like pure entertainment. I literally could not guess what happened in this book. She takes it out of the park. She takes the story and she runs with it. It's not like an easy, simple answer. It's so good. Also because you're following along with Pip, you have the information that Pip had. It's so fun to solve it with her. This Summer Will Be Different by Carly Fortune. I had little to no expectations for this. I started my last 24-hour reading video reading this book, and I said it in that. I hate it. I'm not gonna say hate. I don't hate it, but I really did not like Meet Me at the Lake, which was her book from last summer. I thought it was just like kind of half-baked. I thought it was like okay. The only thing that like kept me going with Meet Me at the Lake was the fact that it was based in Toronto, and I'm from Toronto and Muskoka. Like I grew up around Muskoka. There are places that I actually know, and in this one, the backdrop was PEI, and I was nervous going into this because I spent summers with my family out east in PEI since I was a child. Like it's truly one of my favorite places in the entire world, and I was so excited to see it be the backdrop of a book. Was also nervous that it like wouldn't be done justice. I loved this so much. PEI was a character in this, and if you want to see me sob and be like overly sentimental about something, that is in the 24-hour reading video when I read this. We're following Lucy. The book opens with a prologue that was 5 years ago, and Lucy is flown to PEI, and her best friend Bridget, who's from PEI and they are roommates in Toronto, is flying to meet her the next day. She meets this guy in like a random restaurant, and they end up having this one-night stand, and then they wake up in the morning and she's like, oh my god, you're my best friend's brother. You are my best friend's brother. And she did give me the rule that I'm not allowed to fall in love with you. So this can never, no one can ever know about this. And we're following kind of past and present timeline, which I have a really hard time dealing with dual timeline. Like I find dual timeline books just like take me out of it every single time. I didn't hate it in this. There's very few books that dual timeline I don't hate, and I didn't hate it in this. I feel like the communication, the tension, everything in this was done so well. Seeing PI portrayed the way that it was just makes my little heart so happy. I think for just like a typical standalone romance 300-page beach read energy, it is so good. I settled on giving it a 4, and I think I stand on that. It's not overly memorable, but like it holds a special place in my heart because of all the PEI-isms of it. Like when I was reading it, I called my mom like once or twice to be like, oh my god, like that's our favorite restaurant, and like that's the beach that we go to, and like that's where I scraped my knee when I was 5 years old. Like the real places in this were like maybe the catalyst to why I enjoyed it so much, but I actually really realized by the end I was really connected to the characters. Heartless Hunter by Kristen Cicerelli. I loved this. I loved this so much. Okay, I settled on giving it a 4.75, and I was really hemming and hawing about this. I was going back and forth about this. It was the perfect enemies to lovers witch fantasy. I don't know where I'm docking at 0.25 for. I just know I didn't get the 5-star feeling. I think I will get the 5-star feeling further down in the series because the writing, the enemies to lovers, the plot, everything about it was unique and fun and interesting. Just did not get the 5-star feeling. We're following Rune and Gideon, and Rune is the Crimson Moth, and we're living in a society that there's been this uprising and there is a blood guard now. The witch society has been overturned, and now the blood guard is hunting witches. The magic system in this is so cool. Like I've never read anything like this. Maybe I just like I've never really read anything overly witchy, and I loved this. So if you guys have any recommendations of that, please let me know because I really liked where this went. But basically the way that the magic system works is the witches would cut themselves and they would use that blood to do the magic. All the magic in this is blood magic, and whenever they used the blood that they drew for magic, it would turn into like these silver scars. So it was like a sign of status. If you were like a high witch, you would have these beautiful scars all over your body. But now that they're hunting them, those silver scars, those casting scars are like how they're able to identify who is a witch. Rune, our main character, the Crimson Moth, is herself a witch and is hiding it and is living in the upper echelons of society trying to free and get other witches out. And Gideon is like the head of the blood guard, one of the most decorated, most celebrated, captured the most witches. And Rune, being in upper society, is like, I should maybe marry, but I want to marry someone who's gonna help me be the Crimson Moth. And Gideon is like, there is a world that Rune or someone in Rune's circle is the Crimson Moth. So they are both courting each other and both trying to get information from each other and both trying to see if the other person is trying to get information from them. It was so good. Every single time you read in one of their POVs, you understood, like could have sympathy for the fact that they were on the wrong side. The thing I found so different about this that I've like really never read in other fantasies, you have your main character, your strong main character, and they're on like the fritz of society. And they are doing this because it's like the inherently right thing. And they are fighting for the morally correct. And then you have the other person who grew up indoctrinated in this society and they're like, they don't understand that what they're doing is wrong or the side that they're on is wrong. Versus in this, you could see why they felt the way they did on both sides. Like obviously Rune trying to save people and being like, you shouldn't kill any witches. That would be like your morally correct character. But then when you're in Gideon's perspective and you understand why he is like such a vendetta and why he doesn't feel bad about killing witches and trying to eradicate them, you can like see his point of view, and they also both have sympathy for each other and for each other's experience. I loved it. Good Girl, Bad Blood. This is the second book in the Good Girls Guide to Murder podcast. Good Girls Guide to Murder podcast, the Good Girls Guide to Murder book, but this one is about a podcast. She starts a podcast called the Good Girls Guide to Murder podcast. In this one, Pip has made a podcast to like retell all of the solving the first case in its totality because she still feels like the media is not doing it justice. But now one of her childhood best friends' brother has gone missing, and they are like, can you please use your platform and like, can you please be a child detective again, and can we try and find my brother? And she told herself she would never do it again because in the first book, it like kind of turns her life completely upside down. Obviously everything goes a little bit wrong, and she's like, I'm never going to do that again. I'm never going to put myself in that position again. But now that her best friend's brother is missing, she's like, how can I not? And now she is dusting off her detective hat again. And this case was even better than the first one. I'm so excited to read As Good as Dead. I think it'll be even better if it keeps going on the trajectory that it's on. I love this series. I don't know what it is about it, but it just like tickles something in me. 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. I started reading this for a video that I never ended up filming because I started it like 5 days before I was going to Portugal. I don't know why I thought I could read like 3 books for a reading vlog with like 5 days to spare, but I just ended up reading it kind of just for me. I really liked this story. It was really emotional. It did make me cry. I didn't feel like 100% connected to the characters by the end. Like I loved so much about it, and it was such like a full-fledged finalized story. Like the characters had like such depth and like such personalities in it. I did take some like pretty big gap in between reading it, and that might have taken me out of it a little bit. We're following Ava and Shane, and 7 Days in June many years ago they spent together when she transferred to his high school. They both have been dealing with so many traumatic experiences. Ava lives with like chronic pain, and they were self-medicating together, and they just had this like very bright flame of a relationship. They both become writers, and it turns out that they have been writing each other's characters in books for years. Shane has done a a lot of work on himself. Ava has moved on. She has a daughter. She is doing everything she can to be the best mom. But Shane really wants to see Ava and come back and apologize. And now they're having 7 days in June many years later. I did not explain well at all what I meant when I was filming this the first time around, so we're gonna try again. I loved the story in this so much. Everything about this story was so well put together. It was unlike anything I've really read. It read kind of literary fiction and romance. Like, I loved the story. The thing that kept taking me out of it is I had no fucking idea who was talking. There was no names at the beginning of chapters. One like 2-sentence paragraph would be in someone's perspective and then it would switch again. Like, I just felt like I had a little bit of trouble keeping up by the end. In the beginning it wasn't as bad because you were basically just following Ava. The story is so good. I still so think it's worth the read. I just feel like I missed a lot of things because I was like, wait, who's talking? And also like, this must be a side character talking that has never talked before. This is the daughter. Like, I'm confused. Other than that, the story is so good. I was too confused for it to feel like a 5-star, you know? Leather and Lark by Bryn Weaver. I did in fact get this like 2.5 weeks early just because a bookstore put it out far too early, and I did read it in Portugal, and I have some bookmarks that my mom got me from when they were in Portugal before me in here too. If you read Butcher and Blackbird, 110% read this. It was very good. It was nowhere near as good as Butcher and Blackbird. But like, all of the things that made Butcher and Blackbird good are in this. I just didn't feel like the romanced as hard. We're following Lachlan and Lark, which is the guy from the first book's brother and the girl from the first book's best friend. I don't remember their names right now. There's so many names in my head. I truly, if someone held a gun to my head and said remember character names, like, tell my mom I love her. There's just no world. It is a marriage of convenience, serial killers, rom-com kind of energy. Very much the same energy as Butcher and Blackbird, like the rom-com realness of it all. I did find this one a lot more gory, and I also didn't really like the spice in this one. Like, it kind of made me like, ugh, sometimes. However, the story is still there, the plot is still there. This genre of like serial killer rom-coms is so funny and iconic. It's definitely gory and like a little bit gross at times, but it's so good. It's so good. The friendship love in this, the relationship love in this, for us to get the third one, especially with how this one ended. The ending of this one, that like little epilogue, made me sob. And like, they're serial killers. Like, it's a rom-com. How did that happen? Throttled by Lauren Asher. This is the first book in the Dirty Air series, which is I think her first series, right? Was this Dreamland Billionaires, and then we're doing Lakefront Billionaires. I think that's how her series went. I don't remember a ton about this one. It was very forgettable. I think I ended up giving it like a 3.5, but it's not bad. It reads like a very typical swoony, fun little romance. I don't feel connected to the characters literally at all. I think the series will get better as we go on, but it wasn't like the best thing ever. We're following Noah and Maya, and Maya is the brother of Noah's rival, essentially. They're two drivers in F1, and they got in this accident like forever ago, and Noah has hated Maya's brother since then. But now they are on the same team, which is like the best team in F1. Maya just graduated university, so she is traveling with her brother for the entire year. They have this like will they won't they attraction thing going on. I do feel like it was very repetitive. It was a lot of like, oh, she's so attractive, I can't do anything about it. Oh, he's so attractive, but I can't do anything about it. And like, him not being ready for a relationship, but her being like steadfastly like, I deserve a relationship. It was okay. It's good. I will say I loved the F1 of this. The fact that we're going like circuit to circuit, place to place with them, like the plot was so good. It was so easy to like just binge it because I wanted to know what's gonna happen. I was invested if they were gonna win the race. Like, I understand that's completely made up, but it was so entertaining to like hear about the races. If it was just the romance, I think it would have been really bad. It was not my favorite thing ever. However, the story as a whole, really good and really entertaining, and I will be reading on in the series. Last but not least, and like probably my favorite book from this video, on May 31st I was adding up everything that I had read, and I was like, oh my god, if I read one more book, it'll be my best numerical month to date. However, after looking again, it was either way gonna be my best numerical month, and I did not have to read this entire book in a day. Am I so glad I did, because it was probably my favorite book from the month. Yes, The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston, which is Ashley Poston's book that came out before the 7-year slip, like the year before the 7-year slip. And then this month we're getting a novel love story. I think she's like becoming one of my favorite authors. She writes like, it feels like it's written for me. Her books are so emotional, and they're fluffy, and they're romantic, but they also have such cool little elements of magical realism, but then they feel so real that the magical realism of it all is like just like a plot device to like deliver this emotional story. We're following Florence Day, who is a ghost writer in New York City who can see ghosts. She grew up in a funeral home, and both her and her dad have always been able to see ghosts. Clearly she's had some serious trauma, and she ended up leaving her hometown and like literally never going back. Some stuff has happened, and she's had to go back to her small town, and she ends up forming this relationship with a ghost. I don't want to give you anything because I didn't read the back until I was like 100 and something pages in, and it was only at that point that the stuff on the back started happening, and I was so glad that I didn't read the back, and I don't want to tell you anything. It is so good. It was so beautifully written. I love everything that Ashley Poston does with my core, with everything in me. I think if you're the type of person who romanticizes everything, loves to underline, loves to take pictures of their favorite quotes, like sentimental about literally everything, these books will hit you to your core. I also think that if you're dealing with grief right now, like you're in the throes of dealing with grief, I think you should save these books because it's such a prevalent topic in both of them. It's truly a toss-up for me between this and the 7-Year Slip. Like, I loved them both. I do think if like I had to choose, the 7-Year Slip is definitely still my favorite, but like such a close second. Like, it's a toss-up. They're both beautiful, amazing 6-star reads. I love them with everything in me. Also, my annotations in this look like sherbet ice cream. I don't know how to explain it better than that, and it makes me really happy. Those were the 13 books that I read in the month of May, which feels like so many. I am truly very proud of myself. I don't know how in that time I ate, walked my dog, or did anything else reading 13 books. However, it was a very good reading month. There was no like bad books, like nothing stands out that was bad. Let me know if you guys have read any of these books or what books are really on your radar for the month of June, because I honestly don't have anything like really sticking out on my radar for this month. Let me know, and maybe we can read books at the same time and then we can share our opinions and all that stuff. That's my favorite thing in the entire world. I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one. Love you. Bye. Seeing all of those books and knowing that I read them in the last 30 days is crazy to me. That is so many books.